Welcome to our 90th podcast. Today we're reviewing our 2025 predictions. How did we do? Did we come close, predict accurately, or miss the target completely? Keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces.
Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Rich Cruz, an organizational development consultant, joined by my co-host and co-author and co-everything else, Ben Kleinman. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey, Rich. Hey, everyone.
Ben, it's that time. We reflect on the past year and,
Yeah, I like the idea of an accuracyrometer, whatever that word is.
That's a new instrument. I love it.
The thermometer that measures accuracy.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well,
So I was taking a look, and I think you're maybe seeing slightly better results than I am. I was putting us slightly better than flipping a coin, but I think you might have seen us do quite a bit better than that. So let's dig in and we'll see where we get. And by the end of this, you'll know whether to engage us as financial advisors or not.
Right on. I don't bet for a reason, Ben.
Don't think nobody's going to confuse me with the Oracle of Omaha.
Sure. Right on. Cool. All right. Well, episode 44, right? We decided let's do some predictions for 2025.
Yeah.
And we came up with a bunch, right? So
we did. Yeah. And I think in some of our show notes, you'll see maybe in the podcast show notes that we put in quite a bunch. The show itself focused on slightly fewer, but to make it a nice, robust sort of set of predictions, I expanded these out just a little bit.
I like it. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the first one had to do with a renewed focus on teams and teamwork.
Mm-hmm. And what do you say, oh, Mystic Oracle?
I'm seeing not quite. We sort of we identified a talking trend, but I don't think it quite played out the way that I don't want to speak for you or Cheryl, but I don't see it playing out the way I think we were talking about it playing out, with a renewed focus on teaming and team health and that kind of stuff. I've seen a ton of literature on psychological safety. That's become quite embedded over the last 2-3 years, and Cheryl is our resident expert in that. And I've seen a lot of work that talks about recognizing employee needs and employee wellness and employee welfare, but I'm not quite seeing that with regards to teams yet.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? What do you think? Did we nail this one, or did the golf ball go into the rough?
Well, anecdotally, right, I would agree with you, and the conversations that I've had with various leaders throughout this year, right? However, the evidence from both ChatGPT and Gemini, right, Google's AI and of course OpenAI's research says that actually there was a shift back to team cohesion, cross-functional collaboration, and teams of teams. And a lot of this was driven by one of our other predictions was the effect of return to office, and some of having to do with using artificial intelligence as co-pilots and how do we navigate that as a team. And I see that it seems to be corroborated by both, right? Both LLMs, right? Do I have to define LLM? I suppose it's our first acronym today, right? Large language models.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Rules are rules.
Rules are rules. Yes. So, um, in fact, one of the things about Google, which is interesting, is that from a trend standpoint, in terms of search results and the like, says that leveraging technology for seamless collaboration and personalized team building are two top trends that Google has picked up. It's very interesting, and I think we need to do a little more digging on that. Ben,
Okay. So the jury is split on that one.
split on that one, anecdotally, but from
According to our LLM paymasters, we are right on point.
yeah,
Okay,
cool.
cool. Well, I like it. Already, little controversy.
Yes, right on.
Heat up our predictions podcast. Okay, next one. We were talking about return to office and specifically the downside of forced return to office.
Sure.
And we thought that that would not play out well. And indeed, that has not played out terribly well. The forced return to office has caused a lot of churn, at least in the social media and people really fighting having to be forced back into the office 5 days a week.
Yep.
I think where I'm seeing sort of that happy-ish medium is where you see people coming into the office on 2 or 3 days a week where they have a coordinated schedule with their team. So maybe this is in part related to that teams and teamwork that you were just talking about and how there might be some renewed focus on stronger teams, healthier teams, that kind of thing. Where people will try to coordinate their in days with other team members or other critical stakeholders for projects they're working on, so they can be very productive on those 2 or 3 days while they're in office. But I don't think anyone is very excited about relinquishing their full freedom and flexibility and all of that 5 days a week.
Right. And I don't know about you, but again, from personal experience, if you go downtown Chicago, right, on a Monday or a Friday, it's navigable, right? On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's full of angry people that have to go back to work.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So we know that hybrid work schedules are back.
Yes, but and the evidence does show that. And now, look, again, we're using artificial intelligence. This has to be, I mean, and I have asked for some sources here, so I'll pull from some of that. But some of the research does point to there's been some lost talent due to RTO, return to office, and one. And again, I need to look at the study, so I don't really want to put a percentage on this, but one source says that remote workers indicated that they would look for new jobs if flexibility was removed or worried, right? So I think you nailed it, man.
Interesting.
Ding.
Well, yeah, double ding. We have that ties into one of our other predictions, so maybe we can jump around a little bit.
Perfect.
But just to finish the thought on the return to office, I don't want to sort of get too into it, but as an old fuddy-duddy, I think I have a very different perspective on being in the office versus not. And I was talking to some folks who are very much new to the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of them were saying that they recognize that there's a benefit to being in person, in the office, seeing colleagues, forming connections with colleagues, growing that peer group, growing that team mentality, getting to know your colleagues that is just different and in some ways is a lot more favorable if you can do that on site, balanced with still like my fuzzy PJs on most days to work, to work from home.
Yes. Where are you? So you're not coming to the Zoom meeting in your underwear and all that stuff. So I took a step farther, Ben. I'm sorry. You said PJs.
So anyways,
but so you're talking about from the first one that we looked at, right?
I was talking about sort of the return to office, the forced return to office,
right?
Not playing out so well.
Sure.
And just saying that there's generational aspects to it where even
Yeah.
people new to the workforce
Yep.
who have been much more accustomed to being on Zoom, either through their college years or through
Right.
high school and part of college, or part of college and part of their first years in the workforce because of COVID and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They're recognizing that there's a benefit to being in person at least part of the time. So
Sure.
there's a generational aspect to that as well.
Right on.
The one I wanted to jump to, though, the trend that you were just talking about, is people jumping from one company to another if they
Oh.
feel like there's a better opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I sort of feel like in our prior podcast, we were talking about the impact of a growing US economy,
Right.
leading people to quit their jobs and move to a better environment where they felt like they were better incentives, or it was psychologically safer, or better people, more motivating, better mission, what have you. And I am not seeing that play out. And I know you were just saying that maybe some of that is playing out, but I'm seeing more of the people staying, being very cautious about moving, but just quietly quitting and staying in that role, keeping their heads down, doing just enough to get by, but not really caring as much, not really trying to grow their career or knock it out of the park at that company, waiting until the economy settles, the political situation settles, all of the craziness settles, at least in the US. Things are a
Right.
little bit crazy right now. Waiting till things settle, and then looking for, as the economy starts to become a little bit more upswingy beyond just within tech, they'll probably make a move then. So that one we didn't really predict correct.
Right. And again, don't bet on me regarding that financial aspect of it, because we did have some tumultuous times this year from an economic standpoint that I don't think anybody really foresaw, some of these things, right? So,
Right.
and the evidence again points to, we had the Great Resignation, a few years ago where people were very mobile and it was a job seekers market. It's still an employer's market right now,
Yeah,
where
for
as much
sure.
as um, turnover dropped to 13% is what it looks like here,
Hmm.
which is down from 17% in 2023. Um, so as you said, employees kind of hunkered down and said, "Hey,
Mhm.
we're going to stay here. We're stable here. We may
Right.
not like it, but we'll satisfice." Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
They'll stick it out. The one thing I will say is that that I'm seeing in the world of anything related to AI technology, whether you're an AI developer or someone who works on building chips or building out data centers, things like that, all of those AI engineers and related jobs, almost total mobility for people who are in those roles.
mm,
That's where I think it's more a workers market as opposed to an employer's
that
market. I
makes
think those people can almost and seem to be jumping ship from one to the next, just chasing
mhm.
bigger and better. And so that's
It, but is it? I'm just thinking back to like the class I taught yesterday, which was
yeah.
somewhat on careers and also on organizational development. Is it such that uh they how do I put this? Operationally, they're no longer like is it more of like a projectized workforce that's required for that AI um development and all that? In other words, is it less operational because it's so much innovation going on there that there is a finite end to things, so maybe they don't necessarily they have to jump ship. In other words, right? The end of the contract comes up, and they move to something else. I'm just,
Oh, I
I'm
see
just
what you're
wondering.
saying.
I don't
Yeah.
know the answer
I
to that.
I guess I had not been thinking of it as project stuff, implementing AI at a given company or something like that, but more of the AI engineers that are building the next version of ChatGPT or the next version of Notebook LM or the next version of Claude or what have you. All
Sure.
those engineers seem to be able to just go from one of the big model companies to another, one of the big design companies to another almost at will. And if they wanted to jump to industry and help build out an AI function within any industry, it's very
Yep.
easy for them to have that fluidity and just go from one to the next. It's
Sure.
just, it
That makes
seems like
sense.
there's a lot more fluidity there.
Yeah, I get that. And that makes a lot of sense. Cool.
Okay. Speaking of,
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're going right where I was going to go, man. Go on.
Okay. Speaking of AI, our next prediction had to do with AI and AI literacy and whether that was no longer optional. And we said absolutely no longer optional. And I think we nailed that one. AI has become everywhere. It's totally ubiquitous. And in this day and age now, if you're not literate or becoming literate or have a plan to become literate fairly quickly, you're already behind. And even if you don't wind up using AI a lot, I think if you're not at least aware of what it does, how it works, and where it can benefit some of your colleagues and your function, your industry, it's just going to be tough sledding for you. So we
Sure.
nailed that one.
Yep. And the robot overlords totally agree with you on that. So, all right, what's next?
Okay. What's next? Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about change management, HR, organizational development as industries, as professions, as
Yes.
careers.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we saw, we suggested that HR particularly would still be fighting for a seat at the table. And I feel like we nailed that one. We wrote a whole book about it with our friend Hermie. And yeah, there it is.
There he is. That's right.
And we've talked about it on this podcast many, many times. HR has this golden opportunity, which is lucky for HR, and I'll lump in change management and OD as well. Great opportunity, lucky in that that opportunity is still there. It has not gone frittered away. Take the seat at the table, show your value, make yourself
Yep.
worth being at that strategic table. So I think we nailed that one, that HR in particular is still fighting. What do you think?
I agree totally. Yes. In fact, some of from an SEO, search engine optimization standpoint, key search terms regarding HR and strategy have that tracks because people are searching for those things. They're publishing articles around that. We've published a couple articles around that, right?
Yeah.
So, that totally tracks.
Cool.
Let's do this, Ben, before we go into any more. It's time that we take a quick break. All right. And when we come back, we'll pick up some more predictions. We'll be right back.
Dysfunctional organizational cultures and poorly managed transformations can devastate employee morale and motivation, leading to disengaged employees, poor work quality, and the loss of your best people. The impacts to your organization include high costs, low productivity, and wasted resources. At Harmonious Workplaces, our purpose is to help you build the best workplace possible. We are advisors applying proven organizational development and industrial organizational psychology methodologies to help you become your best organization. We are doers, using time-tested principles to help you execute organizational change initiatives smoothly and successfully. To discover how Harmonious Workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com.
And we're back. And you all missed Ben's happy dance during the break.
One of my favorite things about the Peanuts cartoon, and I know you're a big fan of Charles Schultz, Rich, is the image of Snoopy doing his little happy dance where his feet are kind of
Yes.
doing the thing, and he's kind of at this nice angle doing his dancey thing.
Yep. Yep.
It's like this perfect image of happiness.
Yep. I totally agree. I also like the holiday special, the dancing and the guy like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. I
classic.
yep. Absolutely. Lots of joy. Uh,
Back to our predictions.
uh-huh. What's next?
All right, next one. Continuing on the theme of change management, and we predicted, or at least I was predicting, that there were not going to be any major revolutions in change management in terms of how change management was practiced, in terms of the industry of change management, and sort of looking at it as relatively static in terms of how people do change management. And outside of I don't see that there were any major revolutions in change management in terms of strategy, approach, guidance, best practices, tools, things like that. Now you factor in AI. AI has been used very much in terms of helping change managers, change practitioners, change leads practice change management, helping to gather information about stakeholders, helping to gauge sentiment, helping to build out strategy plans, helping to build out all sorts of activities, all of those things. So if you factor in AI, then that has been a massive assist in how change management is
Sure.
done and practiced and things like that. And I know you've used AI for some of the engagements you were on this past year as well.
Yep.
So I'm curious, how do you see it?
So it's interesting. Like ChatGPT actually says, you're exactly right. No major changes because there's no new framework per se. We still have ProSize ADKAR, Cotter's 8 steps,
Right.
7S,
Bridges model,
Bridges
all
model,
that.
all those, right?
Yeah.
So there is that. However, as you said, like because of artificial intelligence, Google, uh, being the contrarian here, says that no, it actually has been kind of a big shakeup, and part of it has to do not only with artificial intelligence, but somewhat of a move away from this kind of linear, like Lewin, unfreeze, move, refreeze, right? And even ADKAR and some of the other models are very
Mhm.
there's a very linear progression.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
the thought of having things that are more adaptive and iterative has been in the literature a little bit more. So, but part of that I think does come from the machine learning aspect of things, which is there's it's based on patterns, so you iterate based on the patterns that you see and that you're from the data that you're collecting. Um, so it's a mixed bag there, man. I don't know. I would say that the way that I do OD, right, organizational
Mhm.
development, now compared to what I did even 3 or 4 years ago is remarkably different because of how I apply models based on the situation. That's my personal take on it.
Okay, okay. So, maybe then there's a change management has not changed from a higher level strategic lens, but from an operational lens, a tactical lens, it has changed very much given the
Yeah.
tools that we now have at our disposal. So instead of, um, trying to put a roof on with just a hammer, now we're using a pneumatic gun to put in nails and shingles and
I
stuff like
like
that.
it. There you go.
Okay,
Right on.
got it. Okay, so sort of yes, sort of no, sort of nailed it, sort of didn't.
Yep. That's it.
Okay. Next one, we had small business selling. Small businesses selling. And this had to do with a little bit of that generational shift, a little bit of that
Uh-huh.
maybe fluid economy, people trying to exit while there was an opportunity. I don't think that happened. I'm not really close enough to a lot of the small businesses out there, but I don't recall reading about massive amounts of smaller businesses changing hands, selling that in a way that would be significantly different or significantly larger numbers
Right.
than any other year. So I think that is going to happen at some point, and it's maybe just been pushed to 2026 or maybe 2027. We'll see how that plays out. I
Hmm.
feel like there's still a lot of money that private equity and probably some venture capital firms are sitting on waiting to deploy.
Right.
So it's just a question of, at some point, all of that money and all those people trying to exit are going to find matches.
Hmm.
But I didn't see that happen. How about you? Did you see any significant exits this year?
I totally agree with you that, and I think it has to do with the economy,
Uh-huh.
and what we just talked about with
Some of the craziness about same thing with people jumping jobs.
people jumping jobs, right? So,
Yeah.
you're not right now, a lot of these companies are not positioned to sell for the return that they would be looking for. So they're still holding on to their investment until such a time, right? So, yep, I would say I would totally agree. And the artificial intelligence results say the same thing.
Okay. Cool. Let's dive into two that are maybe somewhat related in terms of in the workplace, within the workplace, the social culture, things like that.
Hmm.
We talked about two trends. One, that there would be a lack, sort of growing, increasing lack of civility in the workplace. And the other one we talked about was that there would be continued DEI walkback. So diversity, equity, and inclusion measures would still be
Hmm.
walked back. Um, maybe the second one there is a little bit easier to talk through. The DEI walkbacks, I think we nailed that one. It had already started by the time we rolled out our prediction, but I
Sure,
think that's continued um,
it is.
very publicly for many companies. The one thing I'll say is that there are a number of companies that were already doing some version of DEI before DEI became a thing.
Hmm.
They had really good cultures. They recognized the benefits of being an inclusive culture. They recognized the benefits of having diverse perspectives at decision-making tables. And they're continuing to do that. They're maybe not making as much brouhaha about it, but they're the companies that are good companies. They're going to stay good companies. They're going to continue what they're doing. And then all the ones that were sort of blowing in the DEI wind, same ones that probably blow in the climate change, and we're doing something about climate change, even though they're maybe just doing some token things.
Hmm.
All the companies that were doing DEI before in a meaningful way are going to continue doing that.
Sure, sure. Yep, I agree. And so the evidence that I'm seeing here is so from a civility standpoint.
Hmm.
So I will say SHRM update Society of Human Resources Management. They put out an incivility toolkit last year.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so it actually has some
To help
some
people become more
reports.
incivil.
No, right. It gives a little bit of, actually, it might be called the civility toolkit. I don't remember, workplace civility toolkit, something like that. But it gives some of the research that they've pulled. Um,
Sure.
the science behind it, I'm not entirely sure, but the report is very interesting. I've actually used it in some of my classes and talks recently.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
And they I think they started in 2024, they updated in 2025. So it does point that to, like, up to 70 something employees witnessing or experiencing rudeness or exclusion, so there's certainly
Diving
that
deeper.
that's a that I mean, this is from I will include in the notes a link to their civility report, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm seeing here in this,
Wow.
the results
That's
here.
really high.
Yeah, it is high. I mean,
That's really
even when we looked at, the state of the workforce from Gallup, this global workforce, not
yeah.
necessarily incivility, but, um, issues between managers and employees and disengagement,
I see.
I think that
I
that
see.
that actually corresponds very well with that.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
So
So you think that there was an uptake in civility?
a little, to some extent, there's been at least the discussion about it has gone up. Let's put it that way. The other
Okay.
thing is regarding DEI, um, to to get around that as you know a word that is being shrugged off. Right? I mean, we have had some massive brands roll back DEI, even very recently. Um, and I'm not going to mention any of them, but you can go and take a look at some of those brands that are out there. But we've also seen kind of a change in the way that people talk about it. So that, like, I know the Chicago chapter of SHRM
Hmm.
has moved to DIBS, which diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So it's a little, a little different take on it, but that belongingness has been something that has been talked a lot more of in various circles. It has been actually in research because we've talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And
Yeah.
that belonging
Yeah.
is part of
I
that.
like that. I like the idea of talking about belonging, whether we include it as part of the DEI stuff or separately. I think that's super important, and having that
Sure.
team inclusiveness and sort of leaning into your colleagues and making them feel welcome. I think that's so important to building healthy teams. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
talked about that as a component of resilience as well.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Right,
Some
right,
of our
right.
guests have mentioned some of that. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Speaking of that, one of our predictions had to do with employee well-being and maybe renewed or continually renewing focus on employee well-being within the workplace. And I'm not seeing that in a particularly different way than what we would have seen before. I don't think there was a sea change in how employees are regarded or talked about or any of that. So personally, I'm not seeing that, but I'm curious what you're seeing.
um, a bit of a mixed bag. Organizations that are experiencing a high amount of attrition may be using uh, wellness programs for retention purposes, and that again comes from some of this research here. However, other companies that are experiencing um, they have shrinkage in revenue, or the costs have gone up, and all that has happened this year for some organizations. Um, the well-being benefits are hotly contested and oftentimes get
Sure.
cut or reduced, right? So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's
Okay.
usually has to do with we need to make a change to stop the attrition, and at the same time, um, we also have to watch our costs. So yeah, it is definitely talked about a lot more,
Hmm.
but it put into practice, not too sure.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We've got just a few more. Maybe take a break and then we'll come round it out.
I like it. All right,
Okay.
we'll be right back.
In a world where leadership needs clarity and action, and HR gets left out of the loop, one hermit crab steps in to save the day, only to be shut down by management. From the creators of Hermie the HR Hermit Crab and the Harmonious Workplaces podcast comes a new shell-shocking adventure, Out of the Loop into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry. This book blends workplace satire with evidence-based lessons, reminding leaders that culture, trust, and people strategy don't exist as extras. They form the foundation of lasting success. Whether you work as an HR professional, a leader, or just someone who has survived a few too many staff meetings, Hermes stories will make you laugh, think, and maybe even change the way you see your workplace. Purchase Hermie the HR Hermit Crab, Out of the Loop, Into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry, now available on Amazon and Ingram Spark. Shop now at harmoniousworkplaces.com/Hermie HR Crab. That's harmoniousworkplaces.com/Hermie HR Crab.
Ha! Big change of Fred.
And we're back. All right, Ben.
Okay.
We've almost hit all the predictions, but we have a few more left. So let's see how
do it.
accurate we
All
were.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one we were just talking about a minute ago, but I think it's maybe worth just kind of digging into a little bit more. We were talking about change management and how change management hadn't really changed in terms of the strategy or the overall methodology, but that the tools are now very different or enabled in a different way because of AI. AI has become embedded in how people practice change management.
Right.
And so one of the things you had mentioned is that some folks are seeing that change is no longer viewed as a linear progression and sort of full, I guess, left to right type of progression anymore.
Right. Yep.
That you're seeing that there's a little bit more of a circularity or a ebb and flow, a back and forth, maybe not quite as linear there.
Yep.
And one of the things we had talked about in our predictions was this idea of agile change management.
Mhm.
And I think that's somewhat related to this idea of less linearity and more cyclical type of change activity. Does that make sense before we get too much further? Is the
It does.
agile change management approach kind of related?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So we had predicted that change management would sort of adopt a more agile approach.
Mm.
It sounds like you're saying that, yes, to some extent that has been recognized as a thing, as an approach. Personally, I'm not seeing that play out yet, but I'm curious what if you're seeing more than you were talking about before.
Yeah. So if we look at like true agile, Scrum Master type of context, I haven't seen that either. But elements of change projects that are done in sprints with iteration, with more frequent check-ins, that I would say, not only anecdotally, from my own personal experience, as and part of that, I think, at least again in my experience, stems from some project managers that are accustomed to using those frameworks, right? Have helped to shape some of that,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't see it being agile in its truest form, right?
I see.
But as I mentioned before, an iterative process of a more adaptive change model instead of that linear design, yes. And so I don't know how you would term that if it's not agile, but certainly the talk of iteration, almost to some extent, design thinking when planning out a change, is something that the evidence shows has been at least written about, talked about, put into practice. It's a difference.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Well, that's one to keep an eye on then.
Yeah, I think so.
Next one, we just got maybe two more here.
Yeah.
So next one had to do with an emphasis on ROI
Mm-hmm.
and looking at change initiatives, change managers, change leaders, change practitioners having to sort of continue to justify their existence and show the ROI. I'm not sure anything has changed there. I think change management has always been seen as somewhat of a should have, could have, but never really as a must have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that hasn't changed, at least again from what I'm seeing. What's your take on that?
Uh, so from what the artificial intelligence says, both say that there has been an emphasis on ROI regarding return on human capital. What are we putting into our people? Um, the ROI on learning initiatives. Are we, if we're going to invest in learning and development, are we getting that back to us on culture initiatives and on change? Particularly with budgets being tight and all that. I've heard a lot of things being talked about, like total rewards programs and how we're handling that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
what's the return on investment for those, um, and certainly data driven decision making, right? Where we're using um, a somewhat more scientific approach by baseline where we're at now versus what's happening at the end, and what are the costs and the rewards that we've yielded from that.
Mm-hmm.
So it there does seem to be some emphasis on the fiduciary aspect
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
change.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're seeing that, or you're getting wind of that through the models you're consulting. The thing that I'm seeing that's very related to that, so it's kind of validating in that sense, is this idea that change practitioners talk a lot about ways to measure the value of change management. So,
Sure.
and I think in the last year, I've heard people talk a lot more about ways to concretize the value of what they're doing, and not just in a fuzzy way, like people will adopt change faster or you'll have a better culture, but really getting into metrics that they can measure and track over time in a quantitative way, not just sort of sentiment analysis or fuzzier stuff,
Right.
but in much more quantitative ways. And I like to think of this. It made me think about our recent guest, Rachel Shaw, who talked about HR as essentially just bringing cookies and that sort of thing. And I like to think about it as change practitioners in particular this year have been talking about ways to show up and be more than just bringing a tray of cookies.
Yeah. Yep. Right
Yeah.
on.
Cool. The last one I had, and we can see what I've missed, but the last one I had to do with leadership development and
Mhm.
specifically training leaders in how to be better change sponsors, change leaders, change champions, things like that. And I think, well, good companies are always looking to build up their leaders. And I've been seeing in particular this last year more of a personal quality to how leaders show up. They're bringing more of their personal selves and not just being sort of that voice from on high, very distant and cold. People seem to be, as leaders, people seem to be a little bit warmer. All that's great, but I'm not sure I'm seeing much in terms of how companies or leaders are building themselves up as better change sponsors or building up their change muscle or their change capabilities as leaders.
Sure.
Curious, what are you seeing?
Um, so from from my standpoint, networking and like I've seen a lot more uh coaches. Yeah, I've seen more coaches show up. Um and they are saying we are leadership coaches, and whether or not they're getting hired is yet to be seen. But from my standpoint, but I have seen some people have some really good success in leadership development. And from the research here, themes like leading hybrid and AI-enabled teams, psychological safety, strategic thinking, resilience, and coaching skills. Um, those programs have enrollment in those programs has gone up. Um, that's from ChatGPT. Gemini says that leadership development is projected to grow significantly actually kind of starting this year, particularly with regarding human-centric leadership with that AI enablement.
Mm.
So that's the idea, is to help with the complexities of AI and hybrid teams. So I guess it depends on this, how to spin that. What I would be curious to see, Ben, is, there's leadership and there's management, right? And like
Mhm.
John Cotter, wrote Leading Change and has his 8-step model and all that. He had a book that I think he might have written this book called Accelerate, which describes a two-way system of kind of checks and balances with management and leadership, right? I'm using
Okay.
this if you're if you're watching the video, you see me going up and down for
Rich has
management,
got one hand going up and down
right,
vertically and the other hand going
going
left and right
horizontally,
horizontally.
right? Because the leadership part tends to be l- that flatter organization, right? That the more innovative, disruptive change part of things, right? Where management is efficiency and effectiveness and has a hierarchy for a reason, right? We're
Mhm.
trying to preserve some culture or some set of processes where leadership is challenging, like literally, like the leadership challenge from Cruz and Poster says, challenge the process, right? So it's challenging that. So it'd be interesting to see, like, what are the trends going to be 2026, 2027, not just from leadership on this side, on the innovative side, right? But from a process perspective. That'd be something maybe to ask Dan Pinkham, one of our former guests, what he thinks about that, because he seems to
Yeah, I love
be,
that idea. Yeah.
on that side. So
Yeah. Okay, Dan, over to you.
yeah, coming at you.
Well, you've made it through another episode of Harmonious Workplaces podcasts and 2025 predictions. So it sounds like we did reasonably okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm still not sure I would ask myself for financial advice, but I think we did reasonably okay.
yeah.
And I think the other thing I will say is that I don't feel like a lot of our predictions were outrageously controversial or really going way out and making a leap there. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I suppose that's a little conservative, but you know, um,
Yeah, I
what?
mean, I'm not trying to say that we softballed and completely, went super safe on everything, but
Sure,
these
sure.
were these were these were not like predicting a moon landing in
Right.
5 years or
That's right.
something like that.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Right. Right. So,
Okay.
well, Ben, I think we have a challenge for the what the first or second uh
Well, in an
podcast of
upcoming
the year,
episode,
right?
yeah, or in an upcoming episode, we can lay down our predictions for 2026 and maybe
Yeah.
try to do a blend of reasonable, realistic, and maybe a little bit crazier.
And to the audience, if you have ideas of predictions that you'd like us to make, not that don't have to do with the horse track, you know, let us know.
Or the stock
Or
market.
the stock market, yeah. Keep that out. But yeah, we're like Ben said, we're certainly just, hitting the notes that we know here, but
Right.
there's a vast array of other things.
Or if you completely disagree, if you think that we completely hosed it on one of our predictions and you disagree with what we came up with, let us know.
Right on. Cool. All right.
Excellent. Well, good job. I think we earned our paycheck this week as far as predicting for 2025.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Ben, thanks a million. As always,
Likewise.
thanks for joining us, folks. And until we meet again, make change your friend.
Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network, and remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode.